Have to say, I'm just so excited for this session because I feel like we've put together a panel of rock stars, really. Pre-screening is just an agonizing process for me. I don't know if it's agonizing for the rest of you, but I've gone through it so many times and experienced so many times just, recording over and over and then going through take after take, trying to pick the right one, and then also having to kind of get in the minds of who my pre-screening panel is going to be and what they're thinking about, what they're even looking for. So we're very lucky today to have these three panelists with us. I'll just briefly introduce them and I'll just go by who's sitting next to me on my Zoom screen. So first, Professor Volpe. He's an amazing, amazing bass, and I first heard him in Don Giovanni at the IU Opera Theater several years ago, and it was just an arresting sound. And he was with the Met Opera, I believe, for 13 subsequent seasons, 13 successive seasons. He has performed all across the world, and we're very lucky to have him here with us today. Professor Wyrczynski he was with the Philadelphia Orchestra, I believe, for 12 years. No, 18 years before joining the faculty at IU. He's an amazing musician, has played with so many big names, including Joshua Bell, Sarah Chang, Pamela Frank. And for those of you who have studied with him or coached with him, you'll know that his commentary is just so incisive and so insightful. And I personally was a recipient of that as well. So just an amazing amount of expertise to bring to the table. Same for Professor Roberto Plano, who is the latest addition to the IU piano faculty. And I first heard him when he came to perform a Liszt concert for the IU Piano Academy a few summers ago, which was an amazing, sensitive, intelligent concert. And he also has, a host of performance and competition, like a huge performance and competition career under his belt, including the Cleveland International Competition, first prize there, and finalist at the Van Cliburn in 2005. So just three incredible people. We are very lucky to have them here with us today, and they are all very intelligent and talented musicians. And I'm very excited to hear from them. So as we go through the session, I do have a few questions written down here, but I would like you guys to participate as much as you want to. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and I can bring them up at an appropriate time, or you can just raise your hand and unmute yourself and ask yourself. So with that, I think we can go ahead and get started. So my first question is just a very general question, and I guess it's a very broad scope, and that is, what do you look for when you're listening to a pre-screening recording? What do you personally look for? And then maybe we can go in order of the introduction, maybe Professor Volpe first, and then Wyrczynski and Plano.
Okay, I can speak to what I personally do, okay, when I'm listening to singers audition, either through pre-screening or live auditions. So immediately we hear the sound of the instrument, so we more or less judge the quality of the instrument, okay? Sometimes that's beyond our control, but I mean the quality of it, but still with good technique, quality can improve, okay? That being said, I listen for technical prowess. I listen for intonation, of course. And then what's very important to me, I listen to the language. A lot of what I do in singing is teach and sing in many foreign languages. So if somebody submits a recording to me or singing in a foreign language, I listen to how they handle it, how well they sing in it, their diction, and things like that. So really overall, it's what everybody else would listen for: technique, quality, intonation. And in my particular case, I certainly listen very closely to the language they're singing in and their proficiency in the language itself. That's about it.
I guess I'm next, Peter.
Yeah.
But when I'm listening to pre-screening tapes or recordings, videos of any kind, I just want to emphasize, whatever you do makes an impression, that be good or bad. So, basic things. You have to dress nicely. I'm not talking about concert dress, but I don't want to see somebody in sweatpants or yoga pants or, wrinkled t-shirt, or for string players, I don't want to hear excessive tuning. I don't want to hear loud scraping tuning, because that's a first impression and it ain't a good one. um, you know, uh, I would practice how you're going to present yourself in the recording. Regarding tuning again, if you have to tune, you have to check your instrument, fine. But the kind of the care in which you do it, the kind of sensitivity you do it is important. And then, pick repertoire that shows your best attributes. When I'm hearing undergraduate recordings, I think one is looking for, raw talent and energy and enthusiasm. And then for graduate pre-screening, you want to hear, a kind of developed artist. Do you have a musical opinion? Have you thought about the repertoire that you're doing? So generally, I just say look at everything and have a guest, a friend, look at your video objectively and say, yeah, that looks nice. I don't think you should be standing in front of the refrigerator when your roommate goes, doesn't have to be professional, Academy Award winning quality, but it has to show that you care. And this recording cares. You care about it. Roberto?
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you said. Really, the only thing that we cannot look for, we pianists, is intonation. Even if I would love to understand if the musician in front of me has an idea of pitch, even if he's playing the piano only. But yeah, I completely agree. That's what I look for in the recordings and in the pre-screenings. If I may add something. I know it sounds cruel, but what I think every time that I hear pre-screening is that you had multiple choices and you were able to do this multiple times. So whatever you come up with is the result. It's probably the best result that you can come up with. Then there can be many excuses. Maybe you don't have the right piano. Maybe it's a concert hall that you don't like. The acoustic is not great. Maybe you didn't have the technician that helped you. But in any case, this is your best choice, and it's very, very different from a live audition. So, for instance, of course, we don't have to be perfect, and we as musicians and human beings can do mistakes because that's what we do. But at the same time, if we have the possibility to do it over and over, I want the pre-screening to be your best shot. And so if I start to see, sometimes we hear pre-screening with memory problems, and we are required to play by heart from memory. And what I don't understand is why this guy or this girl, they didn't do it again. To try to show that they have some professionalism and to see that we can trust them. Now, playing from memory is not what they will have to learn, not only what they will have to learn, but it's part of who we are, especially, I would say, in the piano world, probably. And so I want to see that has something that they really cared about, and also it's something that they wanted to show to us, not only memory, but mistakes, big mistakes, of course, and non-professionalism in how they present things to us. So I agree completely with the setting. It has to be somehow professional, and it has to be something that allows us to see their musicianship and their seriousness as musician, already from the undergrad degree, I would say.
May I echo my colleagues for a moment? When I first spoke, I was expecting this level. So like my colleagues say, please put on a nice shirt. Fa una bella figura. We have to put our best foot forward. So if you're submitting something, especially in a recording that we're going to hear, we're expecting that that's your absolute best. So if you have a moment to listen, of course you have a moment. Listen to what you've recorded. Judge it yourself. If you're thrilled with it, fine, submit it. But do everything that's in your control to do, like look your best, pick a scene in your space that is pleasant, record it a couple of times and put your best foot forward, because what we expect is your very best. What we're assuming is your very, very best. So bear that in mind. Take it to your teacher. How do you think this sounds? Is it good? Should I do it again? When you make recordings, you have us as a tool. Bring your recordings to us. This past 2 weeks, I've been flooded with PDFs and links. Can you hear my arias for submission? Can you hear this? Can you hear that? And most of them I send back. I warned all of my students, you're not going to get it in one take or even two. Take the time, because the result that you submit is telling us that this is the absolute best you can do. Just bear that in mind when you send in your tapes. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, also, if I may add, I completely agree, Peter. And also that is really your best chance, because then when you will audition live, especially for pianists, you don't know which instrument you're going to have, and you don't know the acoustic of the room. So there's so many things that you cannot control. And also, you don't know what we will ask you, right, to play. We can stop you, and this is kind of strange for a musician to know that at some point you will be stopped. You cannot express your whole potential. In the pre-screening, instead, you are under control of everything. You can do whatever you want because nobody's telling you what to do. So you have to show. But many times I don't see that in pre-screenings. So, yeah, completely agree.
So I guess a follow-up to that would be, and I'm guessing I might know the answer to this based on what you've all just said, but if a student is trying to decide between a take that is more musically convincing but has a technical error maybe a little bit later in the piece, or a take that is more clean overall but not as strong musically, what would you advise them to pick?
I would say do it again.
Until you get it perfect, right?
Yes.
If you have this possibility, why not? The live audition is much different. We all agree. And we do our best at the live auditions, but that moment is live in time. If you record something and you played it musically beautifully, but you played one wrong note, that's an easy fix. Go back, play it musically beautifully again with perfect notes. That seems simple to me. It doesn't seem like it has to be a choice unless you're really pushed down to a choice. And for me, I think I'd rather hear more technical proficiency than musicality.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you need to make the best kind of take. But I personally rather have somebody having a musical perspective than perfection. Anyway, one other thing, in terms of repertoire, I don't know if that's coming later in the talk.
No, go ahead.
But if you have a choice of repertoire, say the order of the repertoire, in some recordings you don't have a choice, I would make sure what you have first is your best thing. I think first impressions are important. But that being said, it shouldn't be, a piece of whole notes. Should not be some strategic blob. It has to be, something.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I completely agree. I insist that, in my opinion, you have to find the time to do it again. Especially, I mean, if this is the pre-screening for your undergrad or your graduate school, that's part of your life as a musician, and probably one of the most important things, because they will decide your future. Because then, based on this tape, you will be admitted to the school where you want to study. And I mean, your future as a musician may depend on this. So I think it's a really important thing. It's not something that you can plan in a week of time and just come up with the result that you get after a couple of takes. So I insist there should be time to try your best. And then if I have to choose, I try to look at both, and I'm expecting that you kind of show both musicianship and technique as well. And if the mistake, in terms of technique, I look at like a random mistake. And if it's really random, but I see that you have a solid technique or some technique that can be developed without like starting from scratch, of course, I excuse the mistake very much. Musicality, of course, is something that is very natural to hear, and so this is also kind of obvious, but of course you have to try to show it as much as possible because we don't know you. So speaking, Stephen was talking about the repertoire. Repertoire is extremely important, and I think we'll come and talk about that. Many times you have complete freedom, or you can choose between things, but still you have freedom to show what you have. And so it's extremely important that you present yourself as who you are. You don't try to play pieces that don't belong to you, but that they represent you very much. If you choose a very, very difficult piece, you have to own it. You have to dominate it. Otherwise, just choose just an easier piece where you can show yourself better, and we will appreciate that instead of seeing you struggling with something very hard that nobody asked you to do. Because this is your choice, and we can also judge the way you think as a musician in terms of your concert life. In concert life, many times they don't ask you what to play, but you are kind of, especially for pianists, you are able to choose your program. So this is the same thing in prescreening. Choose a program that represents you. If you do a large-scale work, don't do only movements. This will drive us crazy. And sometimes if it's not specified, play the complete work. Still, play the complete work. Don't do just the movement. The sonata was conceived as a whole sonata. You cannot just play second movement because you like it. And sometimes this happens in prescreening, and this is bad, I have to admit, but I would already have negative feelings about this tape if I see that.
That's very interesting. And I guess this is something I'm very curious about. I guess that would be kind of a pet peeve, right? If someone submits only a movement of a sonata. So I kind of want to go back to Professor Wyrczynski's sweatpants comment and ask, what are some other pet peeves that you guys have regarding recordings, regarding those pre-screening recordings?
I think, well, for string players, loud and excessive tuning. I mean, if you can't tune beautifully and quickly, I don't want to hear you.
Well, Peter, would you like to start? Or for me?
I was just thinking of, it's nothing we really haven't covered, but a pet peeve, yes. If I turn on the computer for a pre-screening, for an important audition, and I see somebody in a t-shirt and the silky gym shorts that seem to be popular, it's already a turn off, So either consider something like concert wear, at least something neat. Again, it's just representing yourself as best you can. The other pet peeve I might have is somebody that's really clueless about repertoire, singing something or offering something that's way beyond their capability. That can be particularly annoying, especially when we listen to it and they butcher their way through this aria or piece of music. It seems like a silly mistake, unless it's an egotistical mistake. Either way, it's a bad mistake. As Professor Plano said, play something you can own. Even if it's smaller and a little shorter, at least we can hear your proficiency and what you prepare. It's better to show us your best than to, we'll hear the potential in all of you. You're all students, we'll hear it, but if you bite off something more than you can chew, nobody's going to be able to swallow it. So be very wise about your repertoire choices.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything. Something else that I can add, sometimes, sometimes we hear, for instance, pre-screening that come on an upright piano. And of course, that cannot be, maybe it's not your choice. You don't have another choice. And so we completely, we have to listen what you can do on an upright piano and even admire you because maybe you didn't have other possibilities. So just come up with whatever you can. But if you have a choice, of course, try to find a piano where you can really express your ability. This is something that, you know, singers and string instruments, they have their own instruments, but pianists do have a choice. So if you do have a choice, try to find a better possibility. And then when you find a better possibility, speaking of formality, it's not that we want to keep formality in the classical music world. You know, we're open to do everything, and especially the younger generations, they want to try to let classical music become younger, and this is absolutely fine. What we talk about, it's not really about formality, but it's about showing respect and showing that you care about this as much as possible. So sometimes we see auditions coming from rooms where I cannot even imagine how much mess there is in the room. You see the piano, but together, I mean, very close to the piano, you see so many like sheets of paper on the floor, stands there, a stand maybe in front of you, so you cannot really see your hands. And this means that you didn't have any attention in preparing this in a professional way, and that is really bothering.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I guess since repertoire has been brought up a lot, we can dive right into that topic. But before we do, I just want to make sure that I'm not dominating the conversation and remind our guests, especially some of you who have come in recently, that if you have any questions at any time, please feel free to put them in the chat or just unmute yourself and ask. So repertoire, what are some things that you all keep in mind as you assign audition repertoire or pre-screening repertoire to your students? What are some things that are really important to you? And how early do you recommend that they start thinking and planning about this?
Maybe I can start this time. I would say that also it depends on what it is. So if it's a pre-screening for school or for a competition, and in terms of my experience with pianists, I always ask my students to think about competitions at least a couple years ago. I mean, a couple years before the event. I know it's a lot, but it really takes a lot of time to prepare for these things. So as soon as possible. Maybe with school, you have a year to prepare that, but at the same time, the pre-screening doesn't have to be your only goal, of course. So sometimes, for instance, I have second-year masters that have to get ready for the doctoral audition. And so they think about the doctoral pre-screening as their goal in life in that particular year. And that's not right as well, because you have many other things going on at the same time, and it cannot be your only goal. So if you start thinking about that early, and perhaps even not in your second year masters for a doctoral audition, you already have good recordings that you may use. You don't have to go and do one just for that particular thing that you are applied to. If there are no requirements, special requirements with repertoire, maybe you can use a great recording that you did live in a concert, and we will know that it's a concert, and we will appreciate it very much. So in a way, it's like preparing with a lot of time in advance, but at the same time, try not to think that this is the only thing that you have to do, because it's not.
Peter?
Okay. The repertoire is something that is, for me, individual. I have students on many different levels. So when somebody comes to me and says, I have to prepare a recording for whatever reason, I consider very intimately what the repertoire should be. Of course, something safe that is not too much, and something that could perhaps show off this particular student's fortes. If they have good coloratura, we pick something with that to show. Some people don't have that naturally. Some people have more legato to their voice and it's fuller. So I tend to try to match up the repertoire to the strengths of the students. And as far as how long it takes to prepare, as much time as you can give it. I think some students are under the impression that they could pull something off in a week or two. It's really not enough of time. So if you know something is coming, get an early start on it. It's not your only goal in life, as Professor Plano points out, but it's something you have to consider. Don't leave it till the last minute and know that this piece of music is going to be worked into the muscles of your fingers or your throat or whatever it is that you're using. It has to be worked in and oiled up and natural and well presented. And there's so many elements to all of these things, not just arias, but sonatas or whatever you students are preparing. It takes time, you know, it's got to become part of you in order to be your best. You know, we could learn a song or something, musicians can sight read in a day, but is that good enough to submit for an audition, you know? So my suggestion is, if you know something is coming, find your repertoire early, work with your teacher, and make it as best you can. We're coming back to the same point all the time, you know? So you must try to own the things you're about to present. Try not to put new pieces in that are really under-rehearsed or under-thought about. There's a lot of elements that go into these things. Use your intelligence and use your instinct to help guide you, as well as your teachers, hopefully.
I agree completely. I think having repertoire all the time, any time you should think about having repertoire that's ready for this kind of exposure, for auditions. You know, you never know in the music life when an opportunity will present itself. I mean, not just a pre-screening tape. You should have, for string players, a concerto, movement of concerto, a Bach. I mean, just in working order all the time to showcase what you're capable of. Also, you know, musicians are very good at knowing what they don't do well, but it's important to know what you do well and really well. Because that needs to be a guide in how you pick repertoire. And I often will ask students what they do well. And I mean, it's like I ask them to, I don't know what, slap their mother. I mean, it's hard for them to know. So you have to really come to terms with that. You do something well. You have to do something well, or you shouldn't be doing this. But, you know what that is, know what the style of repertoire it is, what piece that is, what you know, what kind of technical aspects you do well, what kind of communication and you know, style of repertoire you do well. Know that, and that needs to be the cornerstone of your repertoire. And you know, and then of course we all work on things that we need to improve on, but having kind of a library of knowing yourself, what you do well, and then having stuff ready, as my colleague said, well in advance. So it's not the first shot, you know, performing it on a pre-screening tape. I mean, that is not a recipe for success.
Yeah, and if I may add something, since you have to show your versatility many times, because at least one requirement that you pretty much always have is that you have to play at least for pianists 2 or 3 styles, at least for schools. For competition it may be different, but for schools you have to show 2 or 3 different styles. So when we ask you that, it's not that you just have to pick pieces from these different styles and then play them exactly the same way, because that's who you are as a musician and as a performer. No, why are we asking you to pick different styles? Because we want to see you and how you deal with those different styles. So you have to come up with ideas that you can show us, and that show us your versatility, your real versatility. So not the fact that we're imposing you to play different styles, but the way you think about those different styles. And this has to come clear to us. If I hear, you know, a Bach Prelude and Fugue played like a Chopin Nocturne, and then it doesn't make sense. And that's why we're asking you to do this. You have to really try to find your voice in that.
I guess, Professor Plano, you touched on this briefly when you said it depends what kind of recording it is, right? But my question is, should recordings be different for auditions, competitions, summer festival pre-screenings, or should they be different at all? Do you have any opinions on that?
Well, to me, the only difference is the requirements. So it depends if they're asking you something in particular or not. If a competition doesn't ask for anything and you play the Goldberg as your best thing ever, then just send the Goldberg because you believe in that. You don't need to show your Prokofiev if they don't ask you to show your Prokofiev and you hate Prokofiev. Just send Bach and that's it. In terms of school, it's different. So many times schools ask for different repertoire, and that's what I said earlier, that you have to show your versatility. But I mean, the common trait is quality, of course. And then if you may have a choice, do have a choice and try to treat each pre-screening in a different way. Don't just say, well, I have this pre-screening that I did with this school. Now I'm applying to the Vank Library. They don't ask for any requirements, but I have this pre-screening, so I'll use this pre-screening because it was pretty okay, even if I don't like it at all. And I don't like the pieces that I recorded, I have it ready, so I'll send that. That's wrong. This is not something that you should do.
If I just add, I know we're talking mostly about school pre-screenings, but often for orchestral jobs, you might have a pre-screening. And to what Peter was saying about, not learning a repertoire last minute, if you plan at all to take professional orchestra auditions, you should, practicing and playing orchestral repertoire and recording orchestral repertoire excerpts should happen way before it's time to do it, because it is stressful when it's time to do it, and you have to have a process, you have to have kind of the tracks laid to get it done right. If you're just waiting to do certain repertoire until it comes up on an audition list, it's too late already. If you don't know 75% of the repertoire, that's just too much of a tall order to do that.
Professor Volpe, do you have any, or maybe you can come from the side of the opera audition. I guess if someone's auditioning for a professional company, they also have to send pre-screenings? Or not necessarily?
That's not necessarily true. I don't know about the COVID era right now, but no, in my business, if you're auditioning for a theater or a company, those are live. And all the more reason you need to be prepared, particularly with your repertoire or whatever else, and make sure your health is good. But in my experience, personally, any audition that I did or was responsible for was live, either on stage at a particular opera house or at some other venue in some major city. They were all live. So okay. Developing a audition skill is also very important, And for me, that means get out in front of as many people as you can, as often as you can, to get the jitters out of your audition performances. Oh, yeah. It's a skill. It happens. You can learn to conquer nerves and every other thing by just doing it, forcing yourself to perform in front of others, master classes, whatever it is. Don't wait to try your new aria at a major audition. Not a wise idea. Try it in front of groups of friends. Create yourself a performance opportunity, But then again, with COVID, it might be a little different at the moment. So some people are preparing auditions that are lucky enough to submit a recording for a real audition. You're very, very, very lucky. And all the more reason it should be as perfect as you can make it, because it's your chance to be perfect.
Yeah, exactly. I agree, because you don't have the stress of the live audition, of course. So take advantage of that if you can.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a couple of myths that I want to bust, or these are two things that I've heard students say to me. One of them is professors have so many recordings to listen to that when they're listening to pre-screenings, they just skip to the hard parts. And the other one is professors know within the first 15 seconds whether they want you or not. Are these true?
Well, not completely wrong, I would say. Well, you know, maybe I don't know. Peter and Stephen have the sound that you can make out of your voice and out of your instrument, maybe even more as an instrument to understand who you have in front of you. For pianists, this may take a little bit longer for us because at first you have to understand if the instrument that the student has in front of him or her is good enough. So you have to understand where the limit is, if it's the instrument or if it's the performer in a way. But yes, it's true, it doesn't take too long. So this is something that I actually learned from my professors also in real life. The beginning and the ending of a program are probably the most important thing. The audience may sleep in between, but they will always remember the beginning and the ending. So make sure that your beginning and your ending are as strong as possible, because there's, I would say, 99% that we will hear the beginning, probably, I don't know, 90% that we'll hear the end, maybe less percentage that we will hear a particular spot in the middle, unless it's really crucial. So for instance, for pianists, if somebody presents Schumann's Fantasy, so Schumann's Fantasy is a very, very long piece, you can hear so many things, but then there's a very, very crucial point at the end of the second movement, which is pretty much non-playable, because it's too hard. And if you go live, you hear great pianists doing a mess there. And that's what we expect. But at the same time, if you present that piece, it means that you found the solution for that passage, which makes sense. It may be still dirty and with mistakes, but still it makes sense. So if you ask me, is there a chance that I don't go and listen to the end of the second movement in Schumann's Fantasy if I have an audition in front of me, like a pre-screening? No, I will go there and listen to it. I'm sorry. That's just because you chose to do it, and so I will do it. If you present, a Chopin etude, even if you're not asked for, and you do it, then I go and listen to the Chopin etude, which means that you solved that particular technical problem and you wanted to show it to us. But then, for instance, if there's a bunch of nocturnes, maybe I won't listen to all of them because I get an idea. So yes, I would say it's true that we have like an idea almost right away, and it's true that we can cut and go to specific points, to me as well.
Not to say the same thing again, but if first impression means a lot. So if if a recording is sloppy and the person looks sloppy and it's just not done with care, recorded with care, I'm less likely to listen to the whole thing. I mean, but if most people do take great care with the recordings, and then that's interesting. And we hear hundreds of videos. I teach at Aspen in the summer, and by the 50th one, you're like, oh. But you know what? You say, this person took so long, so much care to do it. I'm going to listen. I'm going to, maybe I'm going to hear every note, but I'm going to hear this part. I'm going to hear this section. But if somebody's looks like, they did it last minute, I don't have the reserve for that at that point. So really be careful, full of care when you do these things. And I think, like any audition, I think adjudicators are rooting for you. They want you to do well. So when you're doing well, that's good, and we're happy about it. But if you're, anyway, I won't repeat myself.
Professor Volpe, any thoughts on that?
Sure. Again, to second my colleagues, your impression when we first click on the recording, if you look great and your first couple of notes sound great, you're going to grab our interest. We'll set up and we'll start to listen. As far as skipping, I myself, fortunately for me, the nothing is really that long, whether it's an aria or a song. So I tend to be very fair, and I sit through it all. And if the high notes are good, I'll go back and play them again a couple of times, but I don't skip to them. No. But if I do see something, let's say, you know, when you open up, you see the little thumbnail and then you look at the repertoire. And if I see something that raises my eyebrows, like, wow, that's a big piece, you know, I hope they could bring it. I'll listen to the first page or so. And we do know within the first page, page and a half of music, the quality of the instrument and the quality of the playing. Okay. And if it's great, we're going to certainly listen. And even if it's not the best, we will, you know, we'll give you a fair shot. But if I see something that is a piece of repertoire that happens to be very mature and a 21-year-old is presenting it, I'm going to listen very closely and be a very harsh judge about their inefficiencies, let's say. Or I will skip to the hard part and not sit through 11 pages of music. And I'm going to see if they can get to the dead ringer phrase. And if they don't get anywhere near it, I'm not going to listen to the rest of it. It's going to be a turnoff, you know. But I do tend to give everybody a fair shot, you know, whether I think they're wonderful singers or not. I'll listen to them all when I do my duty here at the school for the pre-screenings, yes.
Yeah, and adding something, you have, again, complete control of it. Yeah. So if you want us to really be interested in something, choose your repertoire in the right way so that maybe you can invite us, even if you don't say it, you invite us to listen to a particular thing. So for instance, in the piano repertoire, if there is something that is not really familiar, there's a very big chance that we will go and listen to that piece because we don't know it. And so it's refreshing for us as well. While if we hear only and always the same pieces, it's going to be harder for you probably to make a great impression. So be smart also when you choose the repertoire. Of course, you have to do the right pieces and the right repertoire as well. But if you have fantasy and you have curiosity, which curiosity is so important for us in a musician's life, if you show your curiosity and you show us a piece that maybe we don't know, even if we teach this since many years, you're surprising us. And so we want to get to know you and listen to you live.
Those are very good points. I wanted to ask about the recording process because I don't know anyone that likes recording actually. So I was wondering if you could give us any advice on how you prepare yourself physically or mentally for those recording sessions when you have them.
Who wants to start?
Peter, go right ahead.
I think we're all going to answer the same thing. As far as preparing, you have to have your repertoire dead ready. You have to be confident knowing that what you're about to present is to the best of your ability. And for me, anytime I had to do a recording or anything, I really was very careful of my health. You know, I tried to just kind of cloister myself a little bit in the weeks before. Don't catch a cold. I try not to run myself down. I try to be well rested so my instrument sounds fresh and not, you know, dull and used or tired, you know. But and I try to prepare myself mentally for it too, and not to overthink it or overdo it. You just have to be on your toes. I don't know if there's anything special that I can suggest to you all besides being I think confidence comes in how well you prepared your rep, you know, and how ready you are for this moment in your life and how ready you are to present your best, you know. And sometimes looking your best can help, you know. For me, it does. I know if I put on a really smart outfit, I feel pretty good and I'm ready to go do what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah. Well, I would second that in terms of, for instance, you have a recording with Deutsche Grammophon in a week. Don't go skiing because you can break a leg and you're missing the chance of your life to make a CD with Deutsche Grammophon. So, of course, be careful. Even us, we don't have to be careful with the voice. We can be careful about other things. And here I would actually make a difference between recordings that you present as auditions and recordings that you do in studio. Recordings that you present as auditions, they have to be unedited. So of course it requires a lot of repetitions, but it's really musical, and it's really an image of who you are. Personally, studio recordings, I hate them, and I had to do many of them, and luckily I have CDs, but I hate every time the process, because I feel that it's not the real representation of who you are, unfortunately, because we have to be perfect. And so the editing process, it's something that you cannot avoid to do in a studio recording unless it's, you see in the CD it's a live recording. Then if it's a live recording, we expect that there will be problems. But in a studio recording, unfortunately not. So this is something else that you will learn when you will have the possibility to make a studio recording for a recording label, hopefully very soon. You will see that unfortunately you have to be really 100% perfect, because that's the way it is. And so you will have to learn to keep the idea of the piece, even if the producers will ask you to cut it in pieces, and just to edit and do from bar 1 to 100, and then from bar 101 to 200, and then maybe you have to repeat bar 86. And then you have to go to bar 86 and play it exactly like you played the rest, otherwise the editing won't be good enough. So, but this is really another thing that you will learn eventually to do it in the professional world.
Before you do a recording, I would say you need to have a plan. So first, I would, work with the mic, the mics or the microphone, whichever. I would do some tests, like short tests. I would, test the fortissimos, the pianissimos, how far the mic is from you. Just do that as efficiently as possible, and listen to what the acoustics are and the setup. But then when you actually record the audition, I would decide, some auditions have you do straight through, nonstop, 3 pieces. For Jacob's School, we don't do that. You can record one piece, and then you can record another piece and another piece. So if it's straight through, that's, if it's 20 minutes of music or something, you just got to do it all the way through. But if you can do individual movements or pieces, I might do, like, say, 3 recordings of one movement. Just, here it is, boom. Because if you start, oh, I don't like that, I'm going to start this again, and then I'm going to go back and listen to that. If you're listening in between, that is going to be damaging psychologically. So if you just go in, I'm going to record this movement 3 times, I'm going to record this piece 3 times, then you go back and you listen to it, maybe record another day, but if you just keep toggling back and forth between performing and listening, that is not, in my experience, that is not going to produce good results.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very good point about protecting yourself psychologically during the recording session as well. I received a student question, and she asked, how much time do you reserve to record? How many sessions? And do you ever reuse recordings from previous years? I guess in the perspective of a student, what advice would you give?
Well, I would use old recordings if they're good, and if you can save that time and work on other projects, yes, why not? I would go that way. And then what was the other question?
How much time do you reserve to record, and how many sessions do you typically plan for?
Yeah, unfortunately, you cannot know, I would say, until you're satisfied. So that's why you should start very much earlier than the due date, so that you have enough time to do it. I have a very fast anecdote about my experience. This was many, many years ago, of course. But when I applied for the Cleveland competition, I sent the tape. And at that time, you didn't have, yes, you had computers, but I was probably not an expert yet. But anyway, I had a mini disc. So I recorded on my mini disc, and then I sent the mini disc to the competition with Italian mail. And then a few days later, I asked, what about the recording? Did you receive it? They never received it. So I found out that I had to do the recording again because I didn't have it have it saved on a hard drive. But luckily, this was already after the deadline, but I started the process early enough so that they gave me time, another week, to do the recording again, and I was able to send the recording again. And then I ended up winning that competition. So think about, if I hadn't started so early, maybe I wouldn't have had the possibility to send the second tape in that particular case, and I would miss the possibility to do that particular competition, which then actually changed my career. So it's very, very important to plan in earlier, as early as possible. You don't have that problem now because you can save recordings in your computer, so it's much easier, but still you have to start earlier.
I might add, if you're in music school and you're applying, you're an undergraduate and you're applying to graduate degrees, I mean, I'm not interested in seeing your high school performance. Hopefully you're you're improving, and so maybe after 2 years, but it shouldn't look dated, and that would be a problem.
I'd like to add to that too, please. In my particular business, I would suggest to you students to make new recordings every chance you get. The voice changes very, very quickly, especially with good technique. So what you sounded like a year ago, let's say anywhere between 18 and 26, that you might be at a university, your voice is going to change rapidly. The timbre will change. The strength of the instrument will change. Your technique will get better, hopefully. So I would suggest not using old recordings unless they're within the last month or two. I would suggest making new ones, and that it gives you more experience with recording anyway. And going back to what we're all telling you, and in fact, to the beginning of the hour, start early. Start early. You're not going to get it in 1 or 2 shots. And even in my particular studio, I have a lot of people now applying for young artist programs, and I know that the due dates are the 12th of October. I was on my students in the beginning of August to start doing these things, through late August and all through September. And the ones that took the time and re-recorded or sent me things, we were able to correct many inconsistencies here and there. And the 3 or 4 that did that, we came up with some great stuff to issue to all young artist programs and competitions, and it paid off for them. Take the time, cut out the time to make recordings. And singers, your voice changes. Cut out the time, make new recordings. It's your career, it's your business, it's your interest. Take the time.
Yeah, and I completely agree. When I was speaking about old recordings, of course, in the year or 2 year span. Yeah. But of course, if you're applying to a graduate program, I agree. Don't use the high school one, of course. Yeah.
I think Professor Volpe has to log off in about a minute. So if anyone has any burning questions for him, now is the time.
Actually, I would love to ask Professor Volpe, as I'm a vocalist, of course, and so I will be using like piano accompaniment tracks for my pre-planning recordings. Any advice, any pet peeves regarding those?
No, pet peeves. Listen, we all understand now why you have to use these recordings, and some of them are good. They kind of fool us a little bit. We kind of know, but we don't know. And something like timing a cadenza, let's say, and getting it to come at the last chord or whatever it is, that's a little tricky, but certainly don't be too concerned about that. If you can, it might be helpful to put in, if you have the opportunity to put in, this was done remotely, whatever, here's my best, but we were in different rooms, whatever. Maybe make a footnote if you can, just to alert somebody who might not be as flexible in their judgment, but we understand this now. And you asked about pet peeves. I don't really have any. We went over that, don't do it in a nightgown, you know what I mean? What was your other question? You had something else early. Yes.
It wasn't me, it was someone else.
Oh, okay. I thought there was a second part of that, No, listen, I myself, when I'm judging these things, I have a lot of room for that type of technical inconsistency, you know, I could pretty much isolate that and listen to your singing and what you're doing. So don't worry too much about being perfect. You know, we'll know. And if you're standing alone in the room and we don't see the piano, we know it's being piped in. We'll give you a little leeway for tempos and, you know, not being perfectly with your accompaniment. Don't worry about that too much. Put your best foot forward with your instrument. Okay?
Thank you. That's very reassuring.
You're very welcome.
Okay. Professor Volpe, I won't hold you if you have to leave. Thank you so much for being here.
You're most welcome. Okay.
Everyone,
thank you, everybody. I appreciate the moment. I'm honored to be part of the panel, and I hope that I helped anybody who was listening with the comments they made. Good luck to you all. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. You're welcome. Have a great weekend, everybody.
You too. I think we just have 4 minutes left. So Professor Plano and Wyrczynski, can I steal 4 more minutes of your time?
Sure.
If anyone has any questions, feel free to interrupt me. I guess kind of related to Caroline's question, I did wonder about, now that, you know, we're in a pandemic, a lot of people are doing recordings from their homes or with their own equipment, or they might have, you know, extremely limited sessions with professional recording equipment. So how do you feel about, you know, that sound quality? How much does the sound quality affect your impression? Would you recommend that the student keep recording with their own equipment after, you know, they finish their 1 or 2 recording sessions with professional equipment? Or how do you feel about sound editing to add, you know, reverb if they're playing in an extremely dry room? Any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah. So personally, I never used technicians. I mean, I never asked technicians to record me for the pre-screenings. And this was many, many years ago when you didn't really have too many possibilities. But I thought that they wanted to see my playing without being really careful about the fact that there was enough reverberation or not. And especially now, I would say, I mean, if you want to hire a technician, yes, please do it. But with the modern technology, I think you can come up with a very good result with, you know, and owning a microphone that doesn't cost too much. You can still have good results, and maybe you can put a little bit of reverberation if you want, but it doesn't have to sound artificial, and that's what now we listen to, I would say. And then I see actually a question in the chat. Somebody asks, are their college auditions always recorded, or is it only due to COVID? I would say that usually, yeah, the pre-screening is recorded and then the live audition is real, not recorded. But it may be this year, due to COVID, that the live auditions will be replaced by recorded auditions. So this year is really special. And this means that the recorded audition is even more important than ever, because it may replace the live audition.
The only thing I might add is, in terms of sound quality, is just make sure the mic, you know, you're not overblowing the mic. So if you have a subito forte, and that it doesn't, you know, go all out of the range. Just make sure that whatever microphone you're using can handle your dynamic range or the repertoire range that you have. I think that would be the only, for me, the only kind of disturbing thing, if the microphone is not able to handle your range of dynamics, or the room you're in, or the instrument or something. Just make sure that it's regulated so that we can discern, you know, contrasts.
Yeah. And if I might add, actually, in terms of audio, think into the doctoral auditions, for instance, at Jacob School. There are some auditions like those auditions where you don't see the person. So as a choice of the department, we don't watch the video, we just listen to the sound. In that particular case, I would be more careful than usual to make a sound that really speaks and it's really beautiful. Otherwise, since it's the only thing that we're judging, I think the sound has to be really, really good. While with other auditions, maybe the video can help also to present your personality in the best way. In that particular case, it's only the audio, so you have to be particularly careful.
I think we're right on the hour. So it's time to say goodbye to our wonderful guests. Thank you both so much, and to Professor Volpe for being here. I know that some of you have also had to move hell and high water to arrange your schedule to be here, so I just want to thank everyone for coming, and to our wonderful, wonderful faculty for their time and expertise. Really, it's so encouraging and helpful to hear your advice. I think the amount of people that are here today just really shows how important this topic is to us and how we appreciate your guidance.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and congratulations for what you do. This is really important for all the students.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, everyone.
And Roberto, I hope I get to meet you in person.
Stephen, me as well.
And, collaborate in
Yes,
person.
please, as soon as possible when this is over. Yes.
Very good. All right, thank you, everybody.
All right, goodbye,
Thank you.
everyone. Take care.